The governor's niece had always believed proper young ladies belonged in parlors, not on dusty frontier trails. But that was before the stagecoach wheel shattered against a rock and sent her tumbling into the New Mexico desert sand, 3 miles outside Columbus. Catherine Vance struggled to her feet, brushing red dust from her green traveling dress while the driver cursed and examined the broken wheel. The year was 1885, and she had traveled all the way from Boston to visit her uncle, Governor Edmund Vance, who was touring the territorial towns. The September heat beat down mercilessly, and Catherine felt sweat trickling down her neck despite the bonnet shading her face. "How long to fix it?" she asked the driver, a grizzled man named Pete who had hardly spoken 10 words since they left El Paso that morning. "Can't fix it, miss. Axles cracked clean through. Someone's got to ride back to Columbus, get another wagon sent out." Pete spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "Could be hours in this heat." Catherine looked around at the empty landscape, dotted with scrub brush and distant mesas. The other passenger, an elderly woman named Mrs. Henderson, fanned herself weakly in the shade of the disabled coach. Catherine's throat was already dry, and their water supply was limited. "I could walk," Catherine suggested. Pete laughed harshly. "Begging your pardon, miss, but you wouldn't make it a mile in that getup. Desert don't care if you're the governor's niece or the Queen of England." Catherine was about to argue when she heard hoofbeats. She turned to see a rider approaching from the direction of Columbus, sitting easy in the saddle on a paint horse. As he drew closer, she could make out a tall man in his mid-20s, wearing a dusty brown hat, leather vest, and faded denim pants. A gun belt hung low on his hips, and his face was weathered by sun and wind. The cowboy reined in his horse, taking in the scene with sharp gray eyes. "Looks like you folks could use some help." "Wheels busted," Pete said. "Axle too. We need another wagon from town." The cowboy dismounted in one fluid motion, approaching the coach to examine the damage himself. Catherine found herself studying him, noting the confident way he moved and the strength in his shoulders. His dark hair was slightly long, curling at his collar, and a day's worth of stubble shadowed his jaw. "I'm Travis Jensen," he said, looking up at Catherine. "I work the cattle ranch about 5 miles north of Columbus." "Catherine Vance," she replied, extending her gloved hand automatically. He looked at it for a moment, then shook it gently, his work-roughened fingers careful despite their obvious strength. "The governor's niece," Travis said, and it wasn't a question. "Word travels fast in small towns. Your uncle mentioned you were coming. You know my uncle." "Met him once when he came through last year. Seemed like a fair man." Travis turned back to Pete. "I can ride to Columbus, have them send a wagon, but that'll be 3, maybe 4 hours in this heat, or I could take the ladies back to my ranch. It's closer, and my mother would be happy for the company. Once you get sorted, Pete, you can collect them there." Mrs. Henderson perked up. "A ranch house sounds considerably more comfortable than sitting here in the sun." Catherine hesitated. In Boston, accepting such an invitation from a strange man would be scandalous. But this wasn't Boston, and the alternative was sitting in the blazing heat for hours. "That's very kind of you, Mr. Jensen," she said. "Just Travis is fine. We don't stand much on formality out here." He looked at her thoughtfully. "Though I should warn you, ranch life isn't what you're probably used to. It's rough country." Something in his tone suggested he didn't think she could handle it, and Catherine felt her spine straighten. "I'm sure we'll manage, Mr. Jensen." His lips twitched slightly at her continued formality, but he simply nodded and helped Mrs. Henderson onto his horse before swinging up behind her. "Miss Vance, you mind walking alongside? Ranch isn't far, and Ginger here's already carrying double." "Of course," Catherine said. though her feet already ached in her fashionable boots. Travis kept the horse at a slow walk, and true to his word, it wasn't more than 20 minutes before buildings appeared in the distance. Catherine's feet were burning by then, and she had to gather her skirts to keep from tripping over the hem, now thoroughly coated in dust. The ranch was modest but well-maintained, with a main house, a barn, and several outbuildings. Chickens scratched in a yard, and Catherine could see cattle grazing in the distance. A woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. She was perhaps 50, with graying blonde hair and kind blue eyes. "Ma, we've got guests," Travis called. "Stagecoach broke down on the Columbus Road." "Mercy," the woman exclaimed. "You poor dears, come inside right now. I'm Martha Jensen. Don't mind the mess, I was just finishing up the washing." The interior of the ranch house was simple but clean, with whitewashed walls and handmade furniture. It was cooler inside, and Catherine sighed with relief as Martha bustled about, bringing water and settling Mrs. Henderson into a comfortable chair. "Let me see those feet," Martha said to Catherine, noticing her pained expression. "Travis, go make yourself useful elsewhere while I help Miss Vance." When Catherine's boots came off, her stockings were stained with blood from blisters. Martha clicked her tongue sympathetically. "These fancy shoes aren't made for walking in the desert. I'll get some ointment and bandages." Catherine felt embarrassed by her own weakness, but Martha's kindness was genuine. As the older woman tended her feet, she asked, "You're visiting your uncle?" "Yes, madam. He's touring the territorial towns, and I wanted to see the West for myself. Everyone in Boston talks about it, but I realized I'd never been further than New York." "What do you think so far?" Catherine laughed. "Honestly, it's hotter and dustier than I imagined, but there's something, I don't know, something compelling about it, the space, the freedom. Everything seems bigger somehow." Martha smiled. "That's what I thought when I first came here 20 years ago. I was a city girl too, from St. Louis. My husband brought me out here, and I thought I'd die of loneliness and heat, but the land grows on you. Your husband passed 3 years ago." Heart gave out. Martha's expression was sad but peaceful. "Travis has run the ranch since then. He's a good boy, responsible, works himself too hard sometimes, but he takes care of things." Mrs. Henderson had dozed off in her chair, and Martha lowered her voice. "He needs a good woman, but pickings are slim around here. Most of the girls in Columbus are already spoken for, and the ones who aren't, well, Travis deserves better than saloon girls and opportunists." Catherine felt her cheeks warm. "I'm sure he'll find someone suitable." "Maybe he already has," Martha said with a knowing look that made Catherine duck her head. Travis returned an hour later with news that Pete had managed to flag down a freight wagon heading to Columbus. The stagecoach would be repaired by morning, and Catherine could continue to Columbus then. Her uncle was staying at the hotel there, conducting business with local ranchers and merchants. "You're welcome to stay here tonight," Martha offered. "We have a spare room and it's getting late. No sense riding into town in the dark." Catherine knew she should insist on going immediately, but the truth was she felt oddly comfortable in this simple ranch house. Mrs. Henderson readily agreed to stay, and so it was settled. At dinner, Travis was quieter, letting his mother carry most of the conversation. But Catherine caught him watching her several times, his gray eyes thoughtful. She found herself wondering what he was thinking, whether he saw her as just another pampered city girl who would flee back east at the first opportunity. After the meal, Martha enlisted Catherine's help with dishes while Travis took Mrs. Henderson to the spare room to rest. "Tell me about Boston," Martha said as they worked. "I haven't been to a big city in years." Catherine described the cobblestone streets, the theaters, the society parties, the strict rules of etiquette. As she talked, she realized how confined it all sounded. Every action governed by propriety, every word weighed for potential scandal. "Sounds exhausting," Martha observed. "Don't you ever just want to do what feels right without worrying about what everyone thinks?" "All the time," Catherine admitted. "But that's not how things work in my world. A woman's reputation is everything. Out here, it's different. People are judged by their character and their work. Where you came from matters less than who you are." Martha handed Catherine the last plate to dry. "Though I suppose that's changing. More people moving in, bringing their city ways with them." Travis came back inside, and Martha suddenly announced she was tired and heading to bed. Catherine suspected this was a ploy to leave them alone, but before she could make an excuse to retire as well, Travis spoke. "Would you like to see the sunset from the porch? It's worth watching." She followed him outside where two rocking chairs faced west. The sky was already turning colors, streaks of orange and pink spreading across the horizon. They sat in silence for a moment, and Catherine realized she didn't feel the need to fill the quiet with meaningless chatter, the way she would at a Boston social gathering. "Your mother is wonderful," she said finally. "She is. Tough as nails, too, had to be, raising me and running this place after my father died." Travis stretched his legs out. "She told me about your feet. Sorry about that. Should have thought to bring an extra horse. It's not your fault. I appreciate your help. Not many people would go out of their way for strangers. Out here you help when you can. Might need the favor returned someday." He glanced at her. "Though I'll admit I was curious. The governor's niece traveling alone. I'm 22 years old, hardly a child." "Didn't say you were. Just that most women from back east travel with more protection. A lady's maid or a male relative. My uncle wanted to send someone with me, but I insisted on coming alone. Well, alone except for the stagecoach passengers. I wanted to prove I could do it myself." "Prove to who?" Catherine considered the question. "To everyone who thinks I'm just a decorative piece of furniture. To my mother, who wants me to marry some boring banker and host tea parties for the rest of my life. To myself, I suppose." Travis was quiet for a moment. "And what do you want?" No one had ever asked her that so directly. "I don't know yet, but I know it's not the life everyone expects me to live. Does that make sense?" "More than you might think." The sunset was in full glory now, painting the desert in impossible colors. "I went east once, to Denver. Hated every minute of it. Too crowded, too many rules. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Out here a man can see for miles. There's room to think, to be." "A man," Catherine repeated softly. "But what about a woman?" Travis looked at her then, really looked at her, and she felt something shift in the air between them. "I think a strong woman could thrive out here, if she wanted to." The moment stretched, charged with possibility before Travis stood. "You should rest. Morning comes early on a ranch, and I know you want to reach your uncle tomorrow." Catherine went to bed in the small, tidy guest room, but sleep eluded her. She kept thinking about Travis's words, about the sunset, about the feeling of space and freedom she'd experienced today despite the discomfort. Boston felt very far away, and for the first time, she wondered if that was a bad thing. The next morning, Catherine woke to the sound of a rooster crowing. Sunlight streamed through the simple curtains, and for a moment she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came back: the broken stagecoach, Travis Jensen, the ranch. She dressed carefully, trying to make herself presentable, though her dress was hopelessly wrinkled. When she emerged, Martha was making breakfast while Travis was nowhere to be seen. "He's out with the cattle," Martha explained. "Man's work never stops, even when there's company. Sit down, dear." Eggs and bacon coming up. Mrs. Henderson joined them, looking much refreshed after a good night's sleep. They were just finishing breakfast when they heard a wagon outside. Pete had arrived with a repaired stagecoach, ready to complete the journey to Columbus. Travis appeared from the barn, and Catherine felt her heart do something strange when she saw him. He helped load their bags, his movements efficient and sure. "Thank you for your hospitality," Catherine said to Martha, embracing the older woman impulsively. "You're welcome anytime, dear." "I mean that." Martha looked between her and Travis with an expression Catherine couldn't quite read. Travis rode alongside the stagecoach into Columbus, which turned out to be a small frontier town with a main street lined with wooden buildings. The hotel was easy to spot, a two-story structure with a painted sign. Several official-looking men stood outside, and one of them spotted Catherine immediately. "Catherine!" Her uncle emerged from the group, a distinguished man in his 50s with graying hair and a politician's smile. "Thank goodness you're here. I heard about the stagecoach trouble." "I'm fine, Uncle Edmund. Mr. Jensen was kind enough to help us." The governor looked at Travis, sizing him up in a glance. "Travis Jensen, the rancher." "Yes, sir. I remember you. You had some thoughts on water rights when I came through last year." "Still do," Travis said evenly. "The big outfits are trying to fence off the creek, cut out the smaller ranchers." Edmund nodded. "We'll have to discuss that, but first, let me get my niece settled." "Thank you for taking care of her, Jensen. I'm in your debt." Travis tipped his hat to Catherine. "Madam, safe travels back to Boston." Before Catherine could respond, he had turned his horse and ridden away. She felt an unexpected pang watching him go, which was ridiculous. She'd known the man less than 24 hours. The next few days passed in a blur of introductions and social obligations. Her uncle was popular in Columbus, and everyone wanted to meet the governor's niece from back east. Catherine smiled and made polite conversation, but she found her mind wandering. She kept thinking about the ranch, about Martha's kindness, about the way Travis had looked at the sunset like it was something sacred. On the third day, Catherine was having tea with some local ladies when Martha Jensen walked into the general store where they had gathered. Catherine excused herself immediately and went to greet her. "Martha, what a lovely surprise." "Catherine, dear. I had to come to town for supplies and I hoped I might see you." Martha's eyes twinkled. "How are you finding Columbus?" "It's nice," Catherine said automatically, then added more honestly, "Actually, it's a bit stuffy. Everyone's very proper and formal. I thought the West would be more relaxed." "Town folk are different from ranch folk. We're having a barn dance Saturday night. Nothing fancy, just neighbors getting together. Would you like to come? Your uncle would be welcome too, of course." Catherine felt her spirits lift. "I'd love to. Travis will be pleased." "He's been asking about you." "Has he?" Catherine tried to keep her voice casual. Martha laughed. "That boy hasn't shown interest in a woman since Jenny Parker broke his heart 2 years ago. You've got him all twisted up inside, though he'd never admit it." Catherine wasn't sure what to say to that, but she found herself looking forward to Saturday with an anticipation she hadn't felt about anything in a long time. Her uncle agreed to attend the barn dance, seeing it as a good political opportunity to mingle with constituents. Catherine spent an embarrassing amount of time deciding what to wear, finally settling on a simpler dress than she'd usually choose, something that wouldn't look too out of place at a ranch gathering. The Jensen Ranch was transformed Saturday evening. Lanterns hung from the barn rafters, casting warm light over the space that had been cleared for dancing. A small group of musicians played fiddle and guitar in the corner, and tables laden with food lined one wall. People of all ages mingled, talking and laughing with an ease Catherine rarely saw at Boston parties. Travis was near the barn entrance, talking to a group of other ranchers. He wore a clean white shirt and dark pants, his hair still damp from washing. When he saw Catherine, he broke off mid-sentence and walked over. "Miss Vance, glad you could make it. Your mother invited me. I hope that's all right. More than all right. He looked like he wanted to say more but glanced at the governor, who was being introduced around by Martha. How are your feet? Catherine laughed. Much better, thank you, though I learned my lesson about proper footwear. The music started up, a lively tune, and couples began to dance. Catherine watched, fascinated by the simple joy on everyone's faces. This was so different from the rigid, formal dances she was used to. You dance, Miss Vance, Catherine, please. And yes, though I suspect what I know and what's done here are quite different. Not so different. A man holds a woman, they move to the music. Everything else is just details. Travis held out his hand. May I? She took it, and he led her onto the floor. His hand settled on her waist, warm and sure, and they began to move. Catherine stumbled at first, trying to follow the unfamiliar patterns, but Travis was patient, guiding her with gentle pressure. Relax, he murmured. Stop thinking so much. Just feel the music. Catherine tried, and gradually it became easier. She found herself actually enjoying it, laughing when she made mistakes instead of being mortified. Travis smiled down at her, and she realized it was the first time she'd seen him really smile. It transformed his face, made him look younger, less guarded. They danced 3 songs together before propriety demanded they separate and dance with other partners. Catherine found herself passed around among friendly ranchers and townsmen, all curious about the governor's niece. Everyone was kind, but she kept looking for Travis, tracking his location even as she made conversation with her various partners. It was nearly midnight when Travis found her again, standing outside the barn to cool off in the night air. Enjoying yourself? He asked. More than I have in months. Maybe years. Catherine turned to face him. Everyone's so genuine here, they say what they mean. In Boston, everything is subtext and implication. We don't have time for games out here. Life's too hard, too short. If you've got something to say, you say it. Is that right? Catherine felt bold in the darkness, emboldened by the music and laughter still spilling from the barn. Then say what you're thinking right now. Travis was quiet for a long moment. I'm thinking you're the most interesting woman I've ever met. I'm thinking I like the way you ask real questions instead of just making pretty small talk. I'm thinking about how you didn't complain once when your feet were bleeding, and how you helped my mother with dishes like it was natural. I'm thinking I don't want you to go back to Boston. Catherine's breath caught. Travis. But I'm also thinking you've got a whole life waiting for you back east. Family, society, all those things that matter to women like you. And I've got a ranch that barely makes enough to keep going, a life that's nothing but hard work and hoping the weather cooperates. So I'm thinking I should keep my mouth shut before I make a fool of myself. You're not making a fool of yourself. Catherine stepped closer. And you don't know anything about what matters to women like me. You don't know me at all. Then tell me. Help me understand why a governor's niece would look at her rancher the way you've been looking at me. Because you're real, Catherine said simply. Because when you talk, I believe you. Because you asked me what I wanted, and no one ever asks me that. Because when I'm near you, I feel like I can breathe for the first time in my life. Travis reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek. Catherine, I'm not good with words, not like you. But I know this. I've known it since I saw you standing in that desert dust, refusing to admit you were hurting. You're brave and smart and beautiful, and you deserve better than a life of cattle and dust. Don't I get to decide what I deserve? The question hung between them. Then Travis cupped her face in both hands and kissed her, gentle and questioning. Catherine's hands came up to rest on his chest, feeling his heart pounding under her palms. She kissed him back, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world, like something she'd been waiting for without knowing it. When they broke apart, Travis looked shaken. I shouldn't have done that. Your uncle's right inside and you're leaving soon, and Uncle Edmund is staying in Columbus another 2 weeks. He wants to visit various ranches and towns, meet with people. Catherine surprised herself with her boldness. I could stay too, get to know the area better. Is that what you want? I think I want to find out what this is between us. Don't you? Travis nodded slowly. Yeah, I do. They returned to the barn separately, mindful of propriety, but Catherine caught Martha's knowing smile. The older woman had clearly orchestrated this whole evening, and Catherine felt a rush of affection for her matchmaking. True to her word, Catherine convinced her uncle to let her remain in Columbus while he made his rounds. Edmund was busy enough with political matters that he seemed relieved not to have to entertain her. He arranged for her to stay at the hotel, with the proprietor's wife as an unofficial chaperone. Catherine spent her days exploring Columbus and the surrounding area, often in Travis's company when his ranch work allowed. He showed her the desert landscape, teaching her the names of plants and animals, pointing out landmarks. Everything was new and fascinating to her, but she suspected it was his company more than the scenery that made her heart race. One afternoon, Travis took her to a high point overlooking his ranch. They sat on a flat rock, sharing water from his canteen. "Tell me about Jenny Parker," Catherine said suddenly. Travis looked surprised. "My mother told you about that, just that she broke your heart. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to." "No, it's fair." Travis stared out at the horizon. "Jenny and I grew up together. Everyone assumed we'd get married eventually. But 2 years ago she met a mining engineer passing through. He had money, prospects, promised to take her to San Francisco. She left without even saying goodbye. I'm sorry. I'm not. Not anymore. If she'd loved me, she would have stayed. The ranch wasn't enough for her. I wasn't enough." He looked at Catherine. "I swore I wouldn't make that mistake again, wouldn't fall for someone who'd eventually want something I couldn't give. And yet here we are," Catherine said softly. "Here we are," Travis agreed. "Except you're different. You're not pretending to be something you're not. You've been honest about where you're from, what you're leaving behind." "I don't know if I am leaving it behind," Catherine admitted. "I don't know what I'm doing, Travis. All I know is that I feel more alive here than I ever did in Boston. When I'm with you, everything makes sense in a way it never did before." Travis took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "I'm falling in love with you, Catherine Vance. Probably already fallen, but I need you to be sure. The ranch life, it's not romantic. It's early mornings and hard work and worrying about drought and cattle prices. My mother made it work because she loved my father enough to sacrifice her old life. But it killed something in her too, that sacrifice. I saw it sometimes in her eyes. Maybe she didn't lose anything. Maybe she gained something different, something better. Maybe. But I need you to understand what you'd be giving up." Catherine thought about Boston, about the life waiting for her there. The predictable rounds of social calls and charity events, the pressure to marry appropriately, to maintain her family's standing. It was safe, comfortable, respectable. It was also suffocating. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "If I were a rancher's daughter, someone from around here, would you hesitate like this?" "No," Travis admitted. "But that's different." "Why? Because you think I'm too delicate for this life, too pampered. Because I think you deserve better than spending your life wondering what if. What if you'd stayed in Boston, married some wealthy man, lived in comfort?" "I would never wonder that," Catherine said firmly. "The life you're describing, it sounds like a prison to me. Yes, a comfortable prison, but a prison nonetheless. Here I feel free, don't you see? You're not asking me to give up everything. You're offering me everything I never knew I wanted." Travis pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." This time when he kissed her, there was no hesitation, no holding back. Catherine felt like she was falling and flying at the same time, and she didn't care about propriety or what anyone would think. This was right. This was real. Over the next week, Catherine spent more and more time at the ranch, helping Martha with daily tasks. She learned to churn butter, feed chickens, tend the vegetable garden. Her hands, once soft and smooth, developed calluses. Her skin, despite her bonnet, darkened slightly from the sun. She ruined 2 dresses and decided to buy more practical clothing from the general store, much to the proprietor's amusement. "You're serious about staying, aren't you?" Martha said one afternoon as they worked on mending clothes together. "If Travis asks me," Catherine replied. "Is that terrible? We've only known each other 2 weeks. When you know, you know. I knew I'd marry Travis's father after 3 days." Martha smiled. "But people will talk. The governor's niece choosing a rancher over Boston society. Your family will have opinions. Let them talk. Let them have opinions. This is my life and I'm choosing it." Martha hugged her. "You're going to fit in just fine out here." That evening, Travis found Catherine in the barn feeding apples to the horses. He leaned against the stall door, just watching her for a moment. "What?" Catherine asked, catching his expression. "Nothing. Just thinking about how natural you look here, like you've always belonged." "Maybe I have. Maybe I just needed to find my way home." Travis came closer, taking her hands in his. They were dusty and calloused now, no longer the soft hands of a lady. "Catherine Vance, I don't have much to offer. A ranch that's more work than profit, a simple house, a life that's going to be harder than anything you've known. But I love you. I love your courage and your stubbornness and the way you dive into things without looking back. Will you marry me? Will you stay here and build a life with me?" Catherine felt tears prick her eyes, but they were happy tears. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." He kissed her then, and the horses nickered softly around them, a benediction of sorts. The challenge was telling her uncle. Catherine put it off for 2 days, rehearsing speeches in her head, before finally asking Edmund to join her for dinner at the hotel restaurant. The governor listened in silence as Catherine explained her decision, his face unreadable. When she finished, he sat back in his chair and sighed. "I can't say I'm surprised. I've seen the way you look at Jensen and he at you. Your mother is going to have an apoplexy." "I know, I'm sorry. Don't apologize for choosing your own life." Edmund's expression softened. "Catherine, I've watched you these past weeks. You've changed. You're happier, more alive. Do you remember when you were a little girl before your father died? You used to be so spirited, so full of life. Then you got quiet, molded yourself into what everyone expected. These past weeks, I've seen glimpses of that girl again." Catherine felt her throat tighten. "You don't think I'm making a mistake? I think you're making a choice. Whether it's a mistake, only time will tell. But I'd rather see you happy on a ranch than miserable in a Boston mansion." He reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "Jensen's a good man. I've made inquiries. He's respected, hardworking, honest. He'll take care of you. I'm not looking for someone to take care of me. I'm looking for someone to build a life with. Even better." Edmund smiled. "When's the wedding?" They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in Columbus. It wasn't the grand society wedding Catherine's mother had always planned, but it was perfect. Martha cried through the whole ceremony, and even some of the tough ranchers looked misty-eyed. Catherine wore a simple white dress she'd bought in town, with wildflowers in her hair instead of an elaborate veil. Travis stood at the altar looking uncomfortable in his Sunday suit. But when Catherine walked down the aisle on her uncle's arm, his face transformed. He looked at her like she was the answer to every prayer he'd never dared to pray. "Dearly beloved," the preacher began, and Catherine felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This was where she was meant to be. This was home. When Travis said, "I do," his voice was strong and sure. When Catherine repeated the words, she meant them with every fiber of her being. "You may kiss the bride." Travis cupped her face gently, like she was something precious, and kissed her with a tenderness that made her heart ache. The small church erupted in cheers and applause. The reception was held at the ranch, with neighbors bringing food and drink. Someone produced a fiddle, and dancing began. Catherine found herself passed from partner to partner, everyone wanting to congratulate the new Mrs. Jensen. Late in the evening, Travis pulled her away from the crowd, leading her out to the porch where they'd watched the sunset weeks ago. The party continued without them, music and laughter floating on the night air. "Happy?" Travis asked. "Happier than I knew I could be." Catherine leaned into his side, his arm coming around her shoulders. "Is this real? Sometimes I'm afraid I'll wake up and find myself back in Boston and all of this will have been a dream. It's real. You're real. We're real." Travis turned to face her. "I promise you, Catherine, I will spend every day making sure you never regret this choice." "I won't regret it. You showed me where I truly belong, Travis. Here with you in this wild, beautiful place. You gave me freedom and choice and love. How could I ever regret that?" They kissed under the stars, and Catherine thought about the girl who'd stepped off that stagecoach weeks ago, so certain of who she was and what her life would be. That girl was gone, replaced by a woman who knew what she wanted and had the courage to claim it. The first year of marriage was an adjustment. Catherine had thought she understood what ranch life would be like, but experiencing it day after day was different from her brief introduction. The work was relentless, the hours long. There were days when her whole body ached, when she fell into bed too exhausted for anything but sleep. But there were beautiful moments too. Sunrises over the desert that took her breath away. The satisfaction of a job well done, whether it was a perfectly baked loaf of bread or successfully helping with a difficult calving. The quiet evenings on the porch with Travis, talking about everything and nothing. The way he looked at her like she was a miracle, even when she was covered in dust and exhausted. Martha taught her everything she knew about running a ranch household. Catherine learned to preserve food for winter, to tend sick animals, to keep accounts. She became an expert at stretching a dollar, at making do with what they had. She learned which neighbors could be trusted, and which ones would take advantage given half a chance. She also learned about the politics of frontier life. Water rights, grazing land, the tension between big ranchers and small ones. Travis fought to protect their interests, and Catherine stood beside him, using her education and her connection to the governor to advocate for fair treatment. Her mother wrote exactly once, a brief letter expressing disappointment and cutting off all financial support. Catherine read it without tears. She'd expected nothing less. Her uncle continued to write regularly, his letters full of news and encouragement. He visited when his duties brought him to the territory, always bringing gifts and stories from back east. "You ever miss it?" Travis asked one evening after Edmund had departed. "The life you left behind," Catherine considered the question honestly. "Sometimes I miss my father. He died when I was 15, and there are moments I wish I could tell him about my life, see if he'd be proud. But miss Boston. Miss society parties and calling cards and the constant judgment. No, never. Not even a little." "Travis Jensen, are you trying to get me to admit I made a mistake marrying you? Just making sure you're happy?" Catherine set down her mending and moved to sit on his lap, her arms around his neck. "I'm happy. I'm tired and sore and I have calluses on my hands and I've never been happier." "Do you believe me?" "Yeah," Travis said, pulling her close. "Yeah, I believe you." Their second spring on the ranch brought drought. The creek that supplied their water dwindled to a trickle and the grass turned brown and brittle. Cattle prices were down and money was tighter than ever. Catherine sold her few pieces of good jewelry, the things she'd brought from Boston to help make ends meet. "You shouldn't have done that," Travis said when he found out. "Those were your mother's, and they were doing no good sitting in a drawer. We needed the money more." Catherine refused to feel guilty. "They're just things, Travis. We're what matters." The drought broke in July with storms that turned the dry earth to mud. They lost some cattle, but not as many as their neighbors. Slowly, things improved. Travis made a deal to sell some horses to the army fort, which brought in much-needed cash. Catherine started taking in sewing from townspeople, her neat stitches and good eye for fashion making her work sought after. They were making it. Barely, sometimes, but they were making it. One evening in late autumn, Martha called Catherine into her room. The older woman had been feeling poorly lately, though she downplayed it whenever asked. "I want you to have this," Martha said, pressing a small wooden box into Catherine's hands. "It was my mother's and hers before that." Inside was a delicate silver locket on a chain. Catherine opened it to find tiny portraits painted inside, a man and woman in old-fashioned dress. "My grandparents," Martha explained. "They came west in a covered wagon, started a new life when everyone said they were crazy. My grandmother used to say that brave hearts run in our family. Now you're part of that family, Catherine. You've proven you have a brave heart, too. Martha, you should keep this." "No, dear, I want you to have it. When you have a daughter someday, you'll pass it to her, tell her about the women who came before. Promise me." Catherine felt a chill of premonition. "Martha, are you all right? Should we get the doctor?" "I'm old and tired, that's all. Don't fuss." But Martha's hand trembled as she closed Catherine's fingers around the box. A week later, Martha didn't come down for breakfast. Travis found her in bed, peaceful in death, gone in her sleep. The ranch felt empty without her, her absence a constant ache. Travis threw himself into work, staying out with the cattle from dawn to dusk, avoiding the house and its memories. Catherine grieved too, but she also had to keep things running. She cooked and cleaned and maintained the household, even as her heart hurt. At night, she held Travis while he finally let himself cry, mourning the loss of his last parent. "She loved you like a daughter," Travis said one night. "You made her last years happy. She told me that once, said she'd been worried about me being alone, but then you came and everything was all right. I loved her too. She taught me so much, accepted me when she had no reason to. She saw what I saw, the woman you really are under all that Boston polish." They held each other in the darkness, finding comfort in shared grief. Slowly, the worst of the pain faded to a gentler sadness, and life went on. The following spring brought surprising news. Catherine realized she was pregnant. She told Travis one evening after supper, nervous despite herself. "Are you sure?" Travis looked stunned. "As sure as I can be." Martha explained the signs before. "Well, before." Catherine twisted her hands together. "Are you happy? I know we haven't talked much about children and with money being tight." Travis crossed the room in 2 strides and kissed her breathless. "Happy? Catherine, I'm terrified and excited and overwhelmed. A baby, our baby." "So you're pleased?" "I'm more than pleased. I'm grateful. Honored, scared out of my mind, but in a good way." They laughed together, and Catherine felt relief wash over her. She'd known Travis would be a good father, but hearing his joy made it real. The pregnancy was difficult. Catherine suffered from terrible sickness in the early months, barely able to keep food down. The summer heat was oppressive, and she couldn't escape it. Her body changed in ways that frightened her, swelling and aching. There was no doctor nearby, just a midwife in town who promised to come when the time arrived. Travis was attentive but clearly out of his depth. He fussed over her, trying to anticipate her needs, often getting it wrong but always trying. Catherine found his efforts endearing, even when they drove her crazy. The baby came on a cold December night, 3 weeks earlier than expected. Travis had to ride to town for the midwife through a light snowfall, leaving Catherine alone and frightened. By the time they returned, Catherine was in serious labor, gripping the bedsheets and trying not to scream. "You're doing fine, honey," the midwife, a capable woman named Sarah, said. "First babies take their time. This could be hours yet." It was hours. Long, painful hours that blurred together. Travis stayed with her, holding her hand, letting her squeeze until his fingers went white. He didn't flinch at her curses or complaints, just murmured encouragement and wiped her forehead with a cool cloth. Finally, as dawn broke, the baby came. A boy, red-faced and squalling, perfect in every way. Sarah cleaned him up and placed him in Catherine's arms. "You have a son," she said unnecessarily. Catherine looked down at the tiny face, overwhelmed with love so fierce it hurt. "Hello, little one, we've been waiting for you." Travis touched the baby's tiny hand with one finger, his expression awed. "He's so small. He won't be for long." "Babies grow fast." Sarah was cleaning up, efficient and matter-of-fact. "You did good, Mrs. Jensen. He's healthy, good lungs on him. You rest now. You've earned it." They named him Thomas Martin Jensen after both their fathers. Thomas had Travis's gray eyes and a surprising amount of dark hair. He was demanding and loud, keeping them up at all hours, but Catherine couldn't imagine life without him. "You're a natural," Travis said one night, watching Catherine nurse the baby. "How did you know how to do all this?" "I don't know. Instinct, I suppose, and I'm making up half of it as I go." Catherine smiled down at Thomas. "He doesn't seem to mind." Motherhood changed Catherine in ways she hadn't expected. She became fiercer, more protective. She also became more confident, trusting her instincts in ways she never had before. She'd given birth on a frontier ranch without modern medicine, had brought a life into the world through sheer determination. After that, everything else seemed manageable. The ranch began to prosper. Travis made good decisions about the herd, and cattle prices improved. Catherine's sewing business grew, and she started selling her work to a store in El Paso. They weren't wealthy, but they were comfortable. They could afford small luxuries occasionally, and the constant worry about money eased. When Thomas was 2, Catherine became pregnant again. This time she knew what to expect, and while the pregnancy wasn't easy, it was less frightening. Their daughter arrived on a beautiful spring morning, an easier birth than her brother's. They named her Martha, after Travis's mother. Little Martha had Catherine's delicate features and Travis's steady temperament. She was a calm baby, easygoing and content. Thomas was fascinated by his baby sister, constantly wanting to help care for her. "We make good babies," Travis said one evening, watching both children sleep. Thomas had insisted on sleeping on the floor next to Martha's cradle, protective even at 2 years old. "We make a good family," Catherine corrected. "Though I think we should stop at 2. I'm not as young as I was, and pregnancies take a toll." "Whatever you want. 2 is perfect. One of each." Travis pulled her close. "Are you happy, Catherine? Really happy? You keep asking me that. Because I need to know. You gave up so much to be here." Catherine thought about it, about the life she'd left behind and the one she'd built. "I gave up nothing that mattered. I gained everything. Our children will grow up free, Travis. They'll know hard work, yes, but they'll also know love and space and possibility. They'll never be trapped by society's expectations. That's worth more than all the Boston drawing rooms in the world." "You showed me something too," Travis said softly. "I thought I knew what I wanted, just the ranch and honest work. But you taught me that there's more. That having someone to share it with makes everything better. That love is worth the risk of hurt." They stood together, watching their sleeping children, and Catherine felt a contentment so deep it was almost painful. This was her family. This was her home. She'd chosen it, built it, fought for it, and she would never regret a single moment. The years passed quickly. Thomas grew into a serious boy who loved the ranch and the animals. By the time he was 8, he was helping his father with real work, not just chores. Martha was different, dreamy and artistic. She drew everything she saw, filling the house with sketches of horses and flowers and landscapes. Catherine worried sometimes that Martha was too much like her, too sensitive for ranch life. But the girl was tougher than she looked. She could ride as well as Thomas, and she never complained about the work. She just approached it differently, finding beauty in the everyday tasks. When Thomas was 10 and Martha 8, Catherine found herself pregnant again, much to everyone's surprise. She was 34, and she'd assumed her childbearing years were behind her. "At least we know what we're doing this time," Travis joked, though Catherine could see he was worried about her age. This pregnancy was harder than the others. Catherine tired easily, and there were complications. The midwife, now an old friend, urged caution and rest. Catherine tried, but ranch work didn't stop just because you were pregnant. The baby, another boy they named James, arrived after a difficult labor that left Catherine weak and exhausted. But he was healthy, a big, robust baby with a loud cry and an insatiable appetite. "That's it," Catherine declared when she was recovered enough. "3 is our limit. This body is done making babies." Travis agreed readily, relieved that both Catherine and the baby had survived. James proved to be a handful, more energetic than his siblings combined. He walked early, talked early, and got into everything. Catherine often found herself exhausted just trying to keep up with him, but she also found unexpected joy in this late baby. Thomas and Martha helped care for him, and watching them with their little brother filled Catherine's heart. They were good children, kind and responsible. She and Travis had done well. One evening when James was about 2, Catherine was on the porch mending clothes while Travis worked on tack repairs. The children were playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the wind. "Do you remember the day we met?" Catherine asked suddenly. "The broken stagecoach, how could I forget? I saw you standing there in your fancy dress, covered in dust, trying to pretend you weren't miserable. I thought you were the most stubborn woman I'd ever met. And now I know you're the most stubborn woman I've ever met." Travis grinned at her indignant expression. "It's a compliment. Your stubbornness has gotten us through some hard times. I prefer to think of it as determination. Call it what you want, I'm just grateful for it. For you." Travis set aside his work. "Catherine, I need to tell you something. I don't say it enough, but I love you. I love the life we've built together. Sometimes I still can't believe you chose me." Catherine moved to sit beside him, taking his hand. "You showed me where I truly belong, Travis. Not just physically, but in every way that matters. Before I met you, I was sleepwalking through life, doing what was expected, being who everyone wanted me to be. You woke me up. You gave me the courage to choose my own path. You gave yourself that courage. I just provided the opportunity. No, it was more than that. You saw me, really saw me, when no one else did. You believed I could handle this life when I wasn't even sure myself. You loved me for who I was, not who I pretended to be." Travis pulled her close, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play as the sun set over the desert. It was a simple moment, ordinary in its domesticity, but Catherine treasured it. These quiet moments, she'd learned, were what made a life. Not the grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but the everyday choice to love and be loved. The children grew. Thomas, at 15, was already taller than Travis and showing signs of becoming a fine rancher. He had Travis's steady temperament and Catherine's quick mind, a combination that served him well. Martha, at 13, remained dreamy but had developed a surprising head for business. She'd started selling her drawings to a catalog company in the East, bringing in money that astounded everyone. James, at 7, was still a whirlwind of energy, but he'd found an outlet in horses. He had a natural gift with them, able to calm even the most skittish animals. Travis joked that James could make a living as a horse trainer someday. Catherine was 41 now, with gray threading through her dark hair and lines around her eyes. Her hands were rough from years of work, her body showing the wear of frontier life. But she was happy. Truly, deeply happy in a way she'd never imagined possible when she was young. One day, a letter arrived from Boston. Catherine almost didn't open it, assuming it was more recriminations from relatives she no longer spoke to. But the handwriting was unfamiliar, and curiosity won out. It was from a cousin she barely remembered, informing her that her mother had died. The funeral had already taken place, and there was a small inheritance, some jewelry and personal items if Catherine wanted them. She showed the letter to Travis that evening. "I should feel something, shouldn't I? She was my mother, but all I feel is empty. Sad for what could have been, maybe, but not grief." "You grieved her a long time ago," Travis said gently. "When she turned her back on you for choosing your own life. It's all right not to feel what you think you should feel. Will you come with me to Boston?" "To collect the things, settle the estate," Catherine surprised herself by asking. "I know it's a long journey and we'd have to leave the children." "Of course I'll come. Thomas can handle the ranch for a few weeks. He's been wanting more responsibility anyway." So they made the journey east, Catherine's first return since she'd left as a young woman nearly 20 years ago. Boston felt alien to her now, too crowded, too noisy, too confined. The buildings pressed in from all sides, and she found herself longing for the wide open spaces of New Mexico. Her mother's house was exactly as Catherine remembered, every piece of furniture in its proper place, everything formal and cold. They sorted through belongings, setting aside items to ship back and things to sell. Catherine found her mother's journals and was surprised to discover entries about her. She read them late one night in a hotel room while Travis slept. Her mother had followed Catherine's life through Edmund's letters, knew about the marriage, the children, the ranch. The entries were stiff and formal, but underneath, Catherine could sense a grudging respect. Her mother had never forgiven her for leaving, but she'd been proud in her way. It was something, at least. They left Boston after a week, both relieved to be heading home. As the train carried them west, Catherine felt herself relaxing, shedding the tension that had gripped her since they'd arrived. "I needed to do this," she told Travis as they crossed into New Mexico territory. "To face my past, to make peace with it. But I'm so grateful that it's just my past, not my present. No regrets, not a single one." When they arrived back at the ranch, the children rushed out to greet them. Thomas had managed everything perfectly, and Martha had kept detailed accounts. Even young James had done his chores without complaint. Catherine hugged each of them, feeling whole again. That night, lying in their own bed, Catherine turned to Travis. "Thank you for coming with me. I couldn't have done it alone." "You could have. You're the strongest person I know. But I'm glad you didn't have to. I love you, Travis Jensen. After all these years, I love you more than the day we married." "Same here. You're my heart, Catherine. You always will be." They made love slowly, tenderly, 20 years of marriage making them perfectly attuned to each other. Afterwards, Catherine lay in Travis's arms, listening to his heartbeat, feeling more at peace than she'd ever felt in her mother's Boston house. The years continued their steady march. Thomas married a neighboring rancher's daughter, a sensible girl named Anna who fit seamlessly into the family. They built a house on the edge of the ranch property and started their own herd with help from Travis. Within 2 years, Catherine was a grandmother, marveling at Thomas's son, another generation to carry on the family name. Martha surprised everyone by leaving the ranch at 18 to attend an art school in Denver. Catherine worried, but Martha flourished, her talent finally given proper training and recognition. She came home twice a year, full of stories about the city and the artists she'd met. She never married, instead building a successful career as an illustrator and painter, her work appearing in magazines and galleries. James, true to early predictions, became a sought-after horse trainer. He stayed on the ranch, building a reputation that brought buyers from across the territory. He married later, at 25, to a school teacher from Columbus who loved him despite his rough edges. Catherine and Travis aged together, their bodies slowing but their love unwavering. Travis's hair went completely gray, and he developed a limp from an old injury that ached in cold weather. Catherine's eyesight weakened, requiring her to use spectacles for close work, and her joints grew stiff. But they still sat on the porch together in the evenings, still held hands like young sweethearts, still found joy in each other's company. They'd built something lasting, a legacy of love and hard work that would continue through their children and grandchildren. On their 30th anniversary, Catherine woke to find Travis already up, standing by the window and looking out at the land they'd worked together for so long. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, joining him. "Just remembering. The day we met, how you looked standing in that desert dust. Our wedding, how terrified and happy I was. The births of our children, all the years between then and now." Travis put his arm around her. 30 years, and I still can't believe you chose this life. I'd choose it again in a heartbeat, 1,000 times over. Catherine leaned into his embrace. "You showed me where I truly belong, Travis, here with you, building something real and lasting. I was never meant for Boston society. I was meant for this, for you, for the family we've created. I'm a lucky man. We're both lucky. We found each other against all odds and we made it work, not because it was easy but because it mattered." Their children arrived later that day to celebrate, along with grandchildren and friends and neighbors. The ranch filled with laughter and music, 3 generations coming together to honor the love that had started it all. As Catherine looked around at the faces of people she loved, she felt overwhelming gratitude. She thought of the young woman she'd been, stepping off that stagecoach in her fancy dress, so certain she knew what her life would be. That woman couldn't have imagined this, couldn't have dreamed of the richness and fullness that waited for her in the desert. She caught Travis's eye across the crowded room, and he smiled at her, that special smile reserved just for her. After 30 years, he could still make her heart race. Later, when the guests had gone and the house was quiet, they returned to their porch. It had become their spot over the years, the place where they'd shared so many conversations, so many quiet moments. "Happy anniversary," Travis said, handing her a small wrapped package. Inside was a photograph in a beautiful frame. It was new technology, still expensive, but Travis had arranged for a photographer from El Paso to come to the ranch. The image showed their whole family, 3 generations gathered on this very porch. "So we never forget," Travis explained. "So we always remember what we built together." Catherine felt tears sting her eyes. "It's perfect, thank you. There's something else." Travis pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I'm not good with words, never have been, but I wrote something for you. Will you read it?" Catherine unfolded the paper, recognizing Travis's careful handwriting. It read, "30 years ago, a city woman stepped into my life and changed everything. She could have chosen comfort and safety, but she chose love and freedom instead. She took a risk on a rancher with more dreams than dollars, and together we built something beautiful. Catherine, you are the best decision I ever made, the best thing that ever happened to me. You showed me that love is braver than fear, that choosing your own path is worth any sacrifice. Thank you for 30 years of happiness. Thank you for our children and our home. Thank you for being exactly who you are. I love you more today than yesterday, and I'll love you more tomorrow than today. Forever yours, Travis. Catherine couldn't speak through her tears. She just pulled Travis close and held him, 30 years of love compressed into that single embrace. I love you too, she finally whispered. More than words can say, you gave me everything I never knew I needed. You showed me where I truly belong. They sat together as the stars came out, just as they had on so many nights before. The desert stretched out around them, vast and beautiful, the land they'd worked and loved for 3 decades. Inside, their grandchildren slept, the next generation already taking root in this place. Catherine thought about the long road that had brought her here, every choice and chance that had led to this moment. If she could go back and tell her younger self what lay ahead, would she believe it? Would she have the courage to take that first step? She liked to think she would. Because some things were meant to be, some people were meant to find each other. She and Travis had been written in the stars, in the desert sand, in the wind that blew across the New Mexico plains. Years continued to pass. Catherine and Travis grew older, their steps slower, their faces more lined. But their love never diminished. If anything, it deepened, mellowing like good wine, becoming something even richer and more profound. They celebrated their 40th anniversary surrounded by even more family. Thomas and Anna had 4 children now, the ranch expanding to accommodate the growing family. Martha came home from Denver for an extended visit, finally ready to settle down. She'd met someone, an architect who appreciated her art and didn't try to change her. They married in a small ceremony at the ranch, Martha wearing a simple dress she'd designed herself. James and his wife had twin boys who were already showing signs of inheriting their father's gift with horses. The ranch was never quiet anymore, always full of children's laughter and activity. Catherine was 62 now, her body bearing the marks of a life fully lived. She moved more carefully, tired more easily, but her spirit remained strong. She still worked in her garden, still cooked for the family, still sat on the porch with Travis every evening. One night, as they watched yet another sunset, Travis took her hand. "Catherine, I need to tell you something." Something in his tone made her turn to look at him. "What is it?" "I've been having pains in my chest. The doctor says my heart is wearing out." Travis squeezed her hand. "I'm not telling you to frighten you. I just want you to know to be prepared." Catherine felt the world tilt. How long? He doesn't know. Could be years, could be months. But I'm not going to spend whatever time I have left being afraid. I just want to be here with you, loving every moment we have left. Catherine blinked back tears. "We need more time. 40 years isn't enough." "A lifetime wouldn't be enough. But we've been blessed, Catherine. We've had more happiness than most people find in 3 lifetimes. They held each other as the sun disappeared below the horizon, and Catherine prayed for more time, more sunsets, more quiet moments together. Travis lived another 2 years. Good years, full of family and love. He saw James's boys learn to ride, saw Thomas's oldest daughter get married, saw Martha's architectural masterpiece built in Denver. He held great-grandchildren, passed on his wisdom, and loved Catherine with every breath. When the end came, it was peaceful. He died in his sleep, Catherine beside him, his hand in hers. She woke to find him gone, and the grief was overwhelming, a physical pain that made it hard to breathe, but she had her family around her. Thomas and Anna took over running the ranch. insisting Catherine stay in the main house for as long as she wanted. Martha came home from Denver and stayed for months, helping her mother through the worst of the grief. James checked on her daily, bringing his boys to cheer her up. Slowly, Catherine found her way forward. The pain never disappeared, but it became bearable. She found comfort in routine, in the land Travis had loved, in the family they'd built together. She continued to sit on the porch every evening, talking to Travis as if he were still beside her. "I miss you," she would say to the empty chair. "But I'm still here, still loving this life we built. You showed me where I truly belong, and I've never forgotten that. I never will." Catherine lived another 15 years, long enough to see her great-grandchildren grow, to celebrate Thomas and Anna's 50th anniversary, to attend the opening of Martha's Gallery in Santa Fe. She remained sharp and engaged, the matriarch of a growing family, beloved by all. She was 77 when she felt her own body beginning to fail. Unlike Travis, she had warning time to prepare. She gathered her family around her, wanting to say the things that mattered. "I've had a wonderful life," she told them all. Her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren crowded into the ranch house. "Richer than I ever imagined when I was young. I want you all to remember that happiness isn't about comfort or safety. It's about choosing love, taking risks, being brave enough to follow your heart." She gave Martha the silver locket that had belonged to Martha's great-great-grandmother, passing on the legacy of brave hearts. She told Thomas how proud she was of the ranch he'd built, how well he'd honored his father's memory. She hugged James and told him to keep working with the horses, to never lose that gift. "And remember your father and me," she said. "Remember that we loved each other and we loved all of you. We built something beautiful here, something that will last. You're all proof of that, every single one of you." Catherine died on a spring morning, the season she'd always loved best. The desert was in bloom, wildflowers painting the landscape in brilliant colors. She passed peacefully, surrounded by love, ready to be reunited with Travis. They buried her next to him on a hill overlooking the ranch, the graves marked with simple stones. The family gathered, several generations standing together to say goodbye and to celebrate a life well lived. Thomas stood at the grave after everyone else had gone, looking down at the markers, his mother and father together again. "You did good, Ma," he said softly. "You both did good. We'll take care of the ranch, keep the family together. We'll make you proud." The wind whispered through the desert grass, carrying the scent of wildflowers, and Thomas felt a sense of peace. His parents' love story had shaped all their lives, had given them a foundation of strength and courage. That legacy would continue, generation after generation, a testament to two people who had found each other against all odds and built something lasting. Years later, one of Catherine's great-great-granddaughters would write the family history, preserving the story of the governor's niece who chose love over comfort, adventure over safety. The story of how she met a frontier cowboy and how he showed her where she truly belonged. How they built a family and a legacy that endured. The ranch still stood, still thrived, a testament to Catherine and Travis's hard work and vision. The porch where they'd spent so many evenings remained, and family members still gathered there to watch sunsets and tell stories of the woman from Boston who'd become a New Mexico rancher, who'd proven that love and courage could overcome any obstacle. Catherine's story became legend in the family, told and retold, evolving slightly with each generation but always maintaining its core truth. That she'd had the courage to choose her own path, to follow her heart, to build a life that was truly hers. That she'd found love in the most unexpected place and had never looked back, never regretted, never wished for anything other than what she'd chosen. And every time someone in the family faced a difficult choice, they thought of Catherine. They remembered her bravery, her determination, her willingness to risk everything for love. They thought of Travis, too, the cowboy who'd seen past her fancy clothes to the strong woman beneath, who'd loved her enough to let her choose freely. Together, Catherine and Travis had created something more lasting than any Boston mansion or society connection. They'd created a family rooted in love and hard work, a legacy of choosing what mattered over what was easy. Their love story became the foundation for generations of courage and determination, proving that the best things in life are worth fighting for, worth sacrificing for, worth believing in. The desert sun continued to rise and set over the ranch, just as it had for decades, just as it would for decades to come. The land endured, as did the love that had built everything on it. Catherine and Travis were gone, but they lived on in every sunset, every wildflower, every loving choice made by their descendants. They had shown each other where they truly belonged, and in doing so, they'd created a belonging for generations to come. Their story was complete, their ending happy and full, their love eternal. And that was the greatest legacy of all.